In Lesson 7.1, you will be finding the circumference and area of circles. A circle is a set of points in a plane that are the same distance from a given point in the plane called the center. The segment from the center to any point on the circle is called the radius. So right here is the radius. A chord is any segment with both endpoints on the circle. A diameter is a special kind of chord that goes through the center. The distance around a circle is called the circumference. The ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter is always pi. In other words, the circumference, the ratio of the circumference to the diameter is always pi. And pi is an irrational number that goes on and on and on forever without repeating. 3.14159 and even more if I had time. Basically, if you took the distance around any circle and divided it by the distance across the circle going through the center, it would equal 3.14159 and so on. The circumference of a circle, or the distance around, is equal to pi times the diameter, or if you prefer to use the radius, it would be 2 times pi times the radius, because 2 times the radius is equal to the diameter. In our first example, we're supposed to find the circumference of each circle and round to the nearest tenth. You're going to start out by writing down the formula. So when you work on this in class tomorrow, you're going to write down circumference equals pi d. Circumference equals pi, which is about 3.14. On the MCAs or the MAP test, you may see them say to use 3.14, which is an approximation for pi. On your textbook assignment, however, all of the answers on the answer key are using pi key on your calculator and then rounded to the nearest tenth. So pi times the diameter, which is 9. So then you're going to go ahead and type in pi times 9. Pi times 9 is about 28.274, and we have some more numbers, but if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, that's one number after the decimal, which means we want to look at the second number after the decimal. And if it's 5 or above, you give it a shove. 4 and below, you let it go. So this is going to be 28.2 inches. The next example, circumference equals pi d. Circumference equals pi times, now the diameter is going to be twice the radius, so 7 2/10. If you double that, you get 14 4/10. Now if you go ahead and multiply pi times 14 4/10, that's going to be about 45.23. And it continues on, but we only need to write down the two numbers so we can round it to the nearest tenth. So this circumference is going to be about 45 2/10. 45 2/10 centimeters. You may want to pause the video and try the next one on your own. Circumference equals pi d. Circumference equals pi times the diameter, and the diameter is 6. Remember, the diameter is all the way across the circle through the center point. So we're going to use our calculator and type in pi times diameter. So pi times 6, and that works out to be about 18.84. And there's more numbers after that, but to round to the nearest tenth, I'm going to just look right here. This is a 4, so we're going to round down to 18 and 8 tenths. 18 and 8 tenths of a foot. Now the second thing we're going to talk about is the area of a circle. The area of the circle is the space inside, and the formula for that is area equals pi r squared. So for this example here, I'm going to go ahead and write down the formula. Area equals pi r squared. So area is going to equal pi times the radius. The radius is 8 squared. So pi times 8 squared. If you're not sure how to type the squared into your calculator, you can ask me to show you that in class. Also, another way to get around that would be to just think about what 8 squared means. 8 squared means 8 times 8, so you could do pi times 8 times 8. And when you type that into your calculator, you end up with about 201.1, because your calculator is going to say this, about 201.06 and some more numbers. But to the nearest tenth, here's the tenths place, 5 and above, give it a shove. So this is going to be about 201.1 kilometers, and this label is going to be kilometers squared, because area is always in square units. All right, our next example, area equals pi r squared. This time though, they gave us the diameter, so we'd want to find the radius, which is halfway across. It's going to be 7.5 feet. So area is equal to pi times 7.5 squared. Then you're going to go ahead and type that in your calculator. Pi times 7.5 squared. And that's going to equal about 176.71. And then to the nearest tenth, that's a 1, so we're going to round down. The area is about 176 and 7 tenths feet squared. Now you may want to pause the video and try the next one on your own. It says to find the area and round to the nearest tenth. The radius is 11 inches, so it might be helpful to draw yourself a picture. This is 11 inches. And then you would write down the formula. Area equals pi r squared, or area equals pi times 11 squared. Then you'd want to go ahead and type that into your calculator, and the area is going to be about, let's see, pi times 11 squared, 380.13, and some more numbers after that, but to the nearest tenth, it's about 380 and 1/10, and it's going to be in inches squared. All right, the next and last examples requires you to do a little bit more thinking. It says, suppose you walk around the edge of the Circular Point State Park fountain and estimate its circumference to be 470 feet. Based on your estimate, what is the approximate diameter of the fountain? Well, if they tell you that the circumference is 470, when we use the formula for circumference, remember that circumference equals pi times diameter, or pi d. We know what the circumference is. We know it's 470. So in place of C, I'm going to put 470 equals pi times diameter. Diameter is what we do not know. Pi is about 3.14. We're going to go ahead and solve this equation for d, for the diameter. Instead of multiplying by pi, you would divide by pi. On this side, when I divide by pi, I'm going to be left with d. And on this side, it's going to be 470 divided by pi. You can use your calculator for that. That works out to be about 149.60. So that to the nearest tenth is 149.6, or 6/10. And this is a diameter, so this is just a distance from one side of the circle to the other. So it's not going to be in square units, it's just going to be 149.6 feet. You may want to pause the video and try the next one on your own. It says the catalog states that a circular area rug covers 19.5 square feet. What is the approximate diameter of the rug? Well, if we say that the rug covers 19.5 square feet, we're talking about the area. So we're going to use area equals pi r squared. And we know the area is about 19.5 square feet. So I'm going to put in 19.5 in place of A equals, and then pi times the radius squared. In order to get the diameter, we're going to first find the radius. Now, to get the r by itself, we'd have to divide both sides by pi. So when we take 19.5 and divide it by pi, you're going to get r squared equals about 6.2. Now, if you remember from when we did Pythagorean theorem, to undo squaring, you take the square root of both sides. Square root of r squared is r, and then the square root of 6 2/10 is going to be a not very nice number. So square root of about 6.2. That's going to equal about 2.5 when you round it to the nearest tenth. And that's the radius. So the diameter is going to equal the radius times 2. So the diameter is going to equal 2 times 2.5, which is going to be about 5. It's going to be about 5 feet.